Standing inside the restored walls of the dust and pages, breathing in the scent of aged paper and polished wood, I am overwhelmed. Feels peaceful now. But this sanctuary is a monument to a brutal war. A war not fought with weapons, but with forged ink, blinding greed, and the ultimate betrayal by my own blood. My name is Clara. For decades, my grandpa Arthur ran this antique bookstore. It wasn't just a business, it was the intellectual beating heart of our entire neighborhood. I remember the golden afternoon light filtering through the stained glass window above the door, casting colorful shadows over thousands of forgotten stories. Grandpa used to sit right there in his worn leather armchair, looking around the towering shelves and tell me, "This place holds the memories of 1,000 lives. Clara, protect it when I am gone." I gave him my word. I held his frail, trembling hands and promised him that the dust and pages would survive. But the ink on his death certificate was barely dry when the nightmare began. The grief was still a heavy weight in my chest when I received a registered letter from my cousin Beatrice. The contents made my blood run cold. It was a copy of a revised will, stamped and notarized just weeks before his passing. The letter was clipped to a short, soulless note. "Grandpa left the property to me. The developer takes over next week. Do not cause a scene, Clara." I stared at the paper in absolute disbelief. My hands shook so hard the paper rattled in the quiet room. Grandpa and Beatrice hated each other. She despised the store, always complaining about the dust, calling it a pathetic relic that smelled like dead dreams. She was a woman who only worshipped designer bags, luxury cars, and ruthless corporate ladders. Grandpa knew this. He knew she would sell it for scrap the second she could. Why would he suddenly leave his most cherished legacy to the one person who despised it? I rushed over to my aunt and uncle's house, clutching the document, demanding answers. They were Beatrice's parents, the ones who always claimed to value family unity above all else. When I walked into their pristine, silent living room, they wouldn't even look me in the eye. And you know what is more agonizing than the betrayal of a greedy cousin? It is the deafening silence of the enablers. My aunt and uncle stood there, shifting uncomfortably, looking at the floor, mumbling about how we should respect the final wishes and keep the peace. Keep the peace? They were letting her destroy our family's heritage. In toxic families, silence is never peace. It is complicity. By refusing to stand with the victim, they were giving wings to the predator. They would rather watch my grandfather's sanctuary be bulldozed into gravel than face Beatrice's vicious wrath. That was the exact moment the devastating reality crashed down on me. I realized I was entirely alone in this fight. But I refused to back down. I contacted Sam, a relentless private investigator who knew the shadows of this city better than anyone. I brought him boxes of Grandpa's old journals, birthday cards, and tax documents. We spent agonizing nights in his cramped office, poring over the so-called will Beatrice had provided. The air was thick with stale coffee and exhaustion. Sam leaned over the desk, holding a heavy magnifying glass to the signature line. "Clara, look at the arch of the letter," he whispered. Grandpa Arthur had severe Parkinson's in his final months. His hands shook violently, making his writing jagged and unpredictable. Yet this signature on the will is remarkably fluid, almost practiced. My heart pounded against my ribs. It was a forgery. A calculated, malicious forgery. But Beatrice wasn't a mastermind. She didn't have the connections to pull off a flawless legal fraud on her own. We dug deeper into the developer who was so eager to purchase the lot. Elias Vance, the CEO of a ruthless retail conglomerate known for swallowing up historic blocks and turning them into soulless concrete plazas. As we researched Vance's past acquisitions, a terrifying pattern emerged. Psychologists often note that predators like Vance utilize a tactic called herd isolation. They do not target strong, united families. They look for the cracks. The jealous cousins, the cowardly parents, the simmering resentments buried just beneath the surface. Vance didn't just buy a forged document. He weaponized my family's internal rot to steal a multi-million-dollar property for pennies. He found the greediest link, Beatrice, and used her to bypass the law. The rage inside me boiled over. I didn't wait for lawyers. I stormed directly into Elias Vance's sleek, intimidating corporate headquarters downtown. I bypassed the receptionist, pushed open the heavy oak doors, and marched into his office. Vance sat behind a massive glass desk, flashing a predatory, terrifyingly calm smile. And sitting right next to him was Beatrice, wearing a brand new, sickeningly expensive gold watch. It hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. She didn't just sell the bookstore for quick cash. Vance had promised her an executive director position in the new retail plaza they planned to build right over the rubble of Grandpa's life. She traded her own grandfather's soul for a fancy title and a corner office. Vance didn't even flinch at my anger. He simply opened his drawer, pulled out a checkbook, and pushed a piece of paper across the glass table toward me. It had 6 zeros. "Walk away, Claire," he purred. Beatrice chimed in, glaring at me with absolute disgust. "Take the money. I have a career to build, I have goals, you are ruining my future." For a single desperate second, I looked at the check. I was drowning in my own debt. That money could fix everything. But then I looked at Beatrice's arrogant face. Society has this bizarre, toxic habit of using the word family as a get-out-of-jail-free card for abhorrent behavior. People constantly excuse toxicity by saying, "They are your blood, they have their own struggles, you have to forgive them." No. Sharing DNA does not grant you the right to steal, deceive, and trample on the legacy of a good man. Blind forgiveness does not create a happy family. It only breeds tyrants within your own home. My stomach churned with anxiety, but then I saw Grandpa's face in my mind, sitting in that leather chair trusting me. I grabbed the check and tore it straight down the middle. I threw the pieces onto Vance's desk. "I will see you both in court." The legal battle that followed was an exhausting, agonizing descent into hell. Word got out, and suddenly relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were calling my phone day and night. They pressured me to drop the lawsuit, calling me vindictive, selfish, and crazy for going up against a billionaire. They said I was tearing the family apart. The loneliness of doing the right thing was absolutely suffocating. I spent nights crying on the floor of my apartment, but I held on to the truth. When the trial finally began, the tension in the courtroom was unbearable. Beatrice sat there looking smug, while Vance's expensive lawyers tried to paint me as a jealous, unstable granddaughter. But they couldn't argue with science. During the third day of the trial, Sam presented our forensic handwriting expert. The expert completely dismantled the forged signature, stroke by stroke, proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that Grandpa Arthur could never have held a pen that steadily. Then came the final blow. We exposed Vance's encrypted emails and shady communications with Beatrice, proving premeditated, orchestrated fraud. The color drained entirely from Beatrice's face. The judge's gavel echoed through the silent courtroom like a crack of thunder. The fraudulent sale was officially voided. Beatrice was instantly stripped of her fake inheritance and was escorted out of the courtroom, facing severe criminal charges for perjury, forgery, and fraud. Elias Vance's conglomerate took a massive, humiliating public relations hit. Investors pulled out, and they withdrew their development plans from our neighborhood entirely. The day I finally took the keys and unlocked the heavy wooden doors of the Dust and Pages again, the silence inside was heavy, almost haunting. The shelves were exactly as Grandpa left them, but he was gone. I realized something profound standing in the dust. If I just kept this place closed up as a private monument to the past, I would slowly drown in the ghost of my family's betrayal. My grandfather always said, "True safety is found when you provide it for others." Memories do not reside in cold bricks, mortar, or aging paper. They live in the people who experience them. By opening these doors to the public, transforming half the shop into a free community library and tutoring center for neighborhood kids who need a safe haven, I fundamentally cleansed the building of Beatrice's suffocating greed. I reclaimed its soul. Now, when I hear the laughter of children echoing off these ancient bookshelves, I know I made the right choice. When the people closest to you try to completely tear down your foundation, the greatest revenge isn't watching them fall. It is building something so beautiful from the wreckage that their darkness can never, ever touch you again.